Good Vibrations podcast is made possible by sponsorship from the Phoenix Light Foundation. Visit thephoenixlightfoundation.co.nz for more information.
Welcome to Good Vibrations with me, Phyllis Brown. I believe that every person has an extraordinary story to tell, one that will give you hope when there is no light at the end of the tunnel. So join me and be inspired by my guests' journey as they share insights you can use to grow and develop on your path. So this week I am welcoming Sofia into the studio today, and of course we met quite some time ago when I think you were just pregnant with your second baby. I think it was around about then. I don't
Probably.
think it was before the first one.
No, because I met you through my friend Marie, and I only
That's
met
right.
her or got closer to her as we both got pregnant at the same time
Yeah.
with my first child.
Yeah. So it's been quite a wee while since we met, and the one thing that always really struck me about you was your presence. You have an amazing presence, and you dress beautifully. You wear a long dress during the day, and you make it look amazing. So you're here to talk about that goddess energy, because you encompass goddess energy, which fascinates me, because I don't encompass goddess energy, and I don't think I do in any way, shape or form. So you're a real mystery to me. I want to explore that with you. But before we do that, just tell the listener a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what your hobbies and interests are.
Sure. Well, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. So I am originally from Portugal, and I've lived in New Zealand for 10 years now.
Okay.
Before coming to New Zealand, I lived in London, where I met my beautiful husband, Cal. So he's a Kiwi, and that's how I ended up here. And I am a mother of 3 little goddesses, one of them not so little. So I'm the stepmother to Abby, who's 16, and I've got my Rosario, who's 3, and my Isabella, who's 1.5. And well before motherhood and all of that, I had a corporate career. So I was way back in the beginning of my career, I was working for a museum in Portugal as the
Right.
communications person. And then I decided that the next step was, what was expected of me back then probably would have been to get a house, get married, because I had a job and things were lining up well. And I thought, I've always wanted to travel, and England was in my heart since when I first visited when I was 13, and I thought, now is the time to go and explore it. And I left my parents' house straight to go to London and discover the world. And yes, that's probably when this whole goddess journey started, but I didn't know it then.
Right.
So I lived in London for 4 years, and after I met my husband Cal, he brought me over here. And so I've had a really varied career, but mostly in marketing roles, and I've had quite a successful career in the tech business. So I was a COO of a tech business in Australia.
Okay.
And before that, for a few years, I was sales and marketing manager for a tech company here in New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, this was all pre-motherhood, websites, projects, all of that.
Yeah. And so with the goddess, when did you first explore the concept of goddess or goddess energy? Because that's you're the goddess in the world, you're the goddess energy. So when did that sort of become a process for you?
So I think I've always been very feminine, so very present to my feminine energy. But I guess coming out of my shell, going to London was really the beginning of it, when I broke away from my Catholic upbringing, not by my parents so much, because it was my choice to go into and be a Catholic, but breaking away from that and owning my own life, adult life. So it really started all the way back then, and I felt very liberated when I arrived in London, and no one cared about what you wore or who you were. There was just such a a melting pot of cultures and differences, and I felt like I had the space to express myself. So it probably started back then. But there was a few significant moments along the way. So probably about 10 years ago, I did a course that explored the power of context in life. So it was a personal development course. And I was looking at the area of health and fitness. And first you get to explore what was your existing context. And it was all about being thin, shrinking myself, all of those things. And I had struggled with an eating disorder when I was a teenager. And I thought, gosh, what a disempowering way to relate to myself, especially as a woman. And I could really see how I ended up with an eating disorder, and I can really see how women struggle with their image. So I first got present to that, and then we got the tools to create a new context. And that's when I first came up with the word goddess. I thought, well, if I didn't have to shrink myself or look a certain way or diet, like what would be an expression or context for the food I eat, how I present myself to the world, how I exercise. So I even had it as a calendar entry, like I'm nurturing the body of a goddess, or like I had all these little creative statements. And that's when my life started getting infused with that goddess concept. And then I guess a little bit later on, something else that really comes to mind is that when I achieved what I wanted to achieve in the corporate world, it all seemed so amazing, and I had the money, I had the title, but it felt empty to a point. So, and I also felt like to make it in the corporate world, I had to live in my male energy a lot, and it started feeling inconsistent with who I was. And I thought, well, there is a way surely to still embody the power of my femininity and bring that into my leadership, and not have to cave in to the things I don't believe in, like chasing people up for targets. Like I believe in empowering people, but I don't believe in doing it for money, right? I know money serves a purpose, but I really felt the corporate world was not a match for that. And then my first child was born, and she was a girl, and I knew early on she was a girl. And in the first few months, I got really this sense of urgency of becoming clear about who I was as a woman, and where I wasn't giving myself permission to express that in my everyday gifts through my work, because I was expressing it in other areas. And I thought, well, now is the time, because she's going to arrive, and I can sit here and say, enjoy your body, be who you are, go out there. But then if I'm not being that, then I felt that there wasn't a match. So those are probably the defining moments, and it has grown from there. Yeah,
I love the word that you wrote there. Or that you've expressed, the context. Now that's a really, really interesting concept about how we live. I've never heard anybody use that word in terms of how we define ourselves by the context of who we are. So can you explain to someone what that would look like for them? Because I think for you, it's about being this corporate person, living in this masculine world. So that was the context of the environment that you were in. So you shape yourself to that context, if I'm picking that up right. So you see that, so then you've changed it. So is there another example just to help people think about, well, what context are they living in? That they could then change to a more feminine, or the inner stuff. How do they then take the inner stuff that then becomes the context of who they are?
Yeah, so look, anything that really gives us a sense that our life is not lighting us up is really where you need to look. And it'll be different for everyone, but for women specifically, I see this a lot. We're slaves to perfection, and I see that everywhere. And it starts really young, and it really breaks my heart, because I was in that cycle for so long, and I still am. I still see lots of layers of that, but I think women can look at perfection, and then they can look at the general term of enslavement. So the things you think you should be doing really point to where you need to look. So what's the existing context versus the one you want to be living into?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer what
That
you
does.
after?
Yeah, it does. So when we come back, we're going to take a short break, and we'll just discover. We'll look at the context, the concept of that within, because I think what you're saying is that we've all got a desire that we maybe suppress because we're having to do other things. So how do we give ourselves permission to unlock that? So we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll look at that.
Cool.
The Good Vibrations podcast would not be possible without the support of Phyllis Brown. For personal development and life coaching sessions, data healings and spiritual insights, go to phyllisbrown.co.nz to book a session in person, on the phone or by Skype today.
Okay, so before the break, we looked at the context and the within. Anything that's not making you happy, then that's where you start. So my question here that I've got just on my sheet here is, how can women connect to their goddess energy? I think for me, so I'll describe to you my concept of goddess, which is why I kind of sort of go, oh my God. So for me, when I think of the word goddess, it's someone who is overtly feminine, who's, I suppose, very, light is the word, but that isn't the word that I mean. Overtly feminine, flowery. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I can't grasp it, as you can tell. So how can I express the more feminine aspects of who I am? Without it being, oh my gosh, I've got to be in long dresses and have Raphael hair and a big bosoms or whatever. Do you know?
No, you definitely don't need to do any of that. Like even my own version is a spunky goddess. It's not, an elegant, soft. I do have that as well, but it actually depends on the mood as well. So I think it comes from a place of honor. So what honors you versus like if you're not honoring yourself, then you're skipping that step, right? And again, like if what you're wearing lights you up, then you're already, and it's not about the external, that's the thing, but like if you wake up in the morning and you're honoring yourself in your divinity, then you're already channeling that, because I think it's impossible not to. So if you're present to your own divinity, and when I say divinity, it's really that creative power we all have inside. So if you look at a child, you can see they're totally inhibited and totally own that spark, right? And we all have that spark, but we sometimes let life dull it, and it might even be something like, so your inner spark is telling you that you'd really like to go do something. I don't know what that is for you. Is there something that's been there that you kind of keep putting off, but...
I think for me, I don't know. I think I do sort of, if I set my mind to something, then I probably would go and do it. And I don't tend to hold myself back, and I do take time out. So I do honour myself in lots of different ways. But
So where don't you though?
I don't feel I'm very feminine. I don't know how else to express femininity.
Yeah.
I feel... yes, I am not a lusciously sexy woman. I'm not, I don't perceive myself. I don't know, maybe I think goddessness is about being sexy. I don't know, because I don't perceive myself as that. I find it...
Because maybe you've got it that it looks a certain way.
I think it must be.
I don't think it looks a certain way. It's really created from within. Yeah. And definitely that sexiness is something that's hard to own, but it is there. So we have to really take a good look and go, where have I suppressed that in my life? And it might have been because maybe it didn't serve you at a certain time. And I remember for me personally, I don't know for you, but I can only share from my perspective. But I remember thinking, because I was always labeled as marriage material, at some point in time, I thought I'd revoke that and go, okay, I will create some mask And it might be, and look, I observe here in New Zealand a lot of women do revoke their femininity for different reasons. But for example, I know a lot of friends who have been brought up in farms, and they wanted to be out helping dad on the farm, but dad said they didn't need them because they were women. And so there they are trying to do everything that the men do, including revoking that natural feminine energy that we're all born with. But it is personal to everyone, but it's also something tricky to own, because again, history has taught us that it's not very safe at times to own our femininity, so it's easier to shut it down. And you know, our sexualities have been misused, and so sometimes we just shy away from all of that because there's so much pressure from the past. So I think it's really starting with the inquiry. What is feminine to me? What is, how do I, even dancing can start the process, right? So where do I not move my body in a way that it feels, that I can feel that, right?
I'll tell you what, there was a clip, it's a TEDx talk, and it's a lovely, large black lady, and she's talking about her femininity and how at different aspects, her goddess energy, but different aspects of her life, where she was out there being proud, but then she attracted the wrong attention, so then she hid it away. And she went, no, actually, I'm just going to be proud. And then she was abused or used by people about who she was and the shape of her body, and then she was back out there. It's a really, really strong message. I've posted it a few times on my Facebook page. But I was at the Women's Expo 2 years ago. I had a stand, and it's just dawned on me what I think femininity is. It's just dawned on me. I think. So I'm at my stand, and there's a couple of stands around, and there are these beautiful young women in their early 20s, big girls. You know, I'm a big girl, and they were confident. I think that's what I lack, probably a sense of confidence about actually just being, and that reminded me of just that flashback. I mean, these were beautiful big girls. They wore the right clothes that just made their shape look amazing. And I remember saying to my Michael, who was on the stand with me, I said, look at those beautiful young goddess women. They are goddesses. It doesn't matter. They just looked stunning. Beautiful makeup on, right clothes, right shape that draped over their figure. And I suppose that's what this video was all about. So it's about confidence of actually just being who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and owning your light. It really is. And owning your light can look in a lot of ways. So where I'd look is, where am I suppressing it, right? Which is what I'm saying. Like, what are you not owning about yourself?
Lots, I think.
Well, we all are, right? But that's where we need to look.
Yeah.
Because the more we own, the more we progress, right?
Yeah,
it's really about ownership. That's what I found.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to shy away, or you know, something happens and you think, oh, maybe I've made a bad decision, but it really becomes who you are, and then there's no way back from that when you start shining the light on where you're not and what you're suppressing. It really, you can't come away from that, right?
Yeah, that's that confidence. Oh, that's amazing. So the other aspect of your life, so you've got this amazing look, and I do love when you post those pictures, those dresses that you make for yourself, where you go to these amazing events. Your husband's an award-winning builder, and he shapes people's lives with the creations that he makes, and then you're there with these ball gowns that you make. They're just stunning. Well, oh, there's another one. Wow, she's made another ball gown. It looks amazing. And it's of you. I always think your long dresses are so you. I've just never met anyone who could wear a long dress like you, Kaz, so far. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So the other aspect of your life is your creative writing. And you do creative writing for a Portuguese publication, have I got that right?
Yeah, well, I don't do creative writing for them. I do writing, but one thing I didn't mention about the fourth step, about stepping into my creative goddess power, is that back in around 2013, I was doing a team management leadership program, and every quarter we needed to create a project that lit us up and had a particular context that was our own creation. So we'd have to create it from scratch and then create the team and lead the team through its completion. So it was a 3-month thing. So I created a project called Goddesses in the World. So again, on the back of that relationship with myself as a goddess, then I thought, gosh, that's really how I see women as goddesses. And I wonder if they saw themselves like that, and if they felt celebrated in that way, what would open up and what kind of power we could bring to the world and they could bring to their lives. So I created that project, and at the time it was a festival in Christchurch called Femme Fiesta. So I applied for a grant from the council, and we had this day called Femme Fiesta, and it was an outdoor event with all these different women who had different talents expressed, and it was really all about celebrating the goddess within. And that really, for a few years I didn't know where to take that, but I created a website after Rosario was born, and that was the stamp on the ground that I would not hide from my writing anymore. And so I created the website Goddesses in the World, and that's where I started doing my creative writing. And again, it was my own exploration, and still is about my own journey into owning my personal power. And it's not just for women though, but because the goddess term is so meaningful to me, I do speak to women more naturally, but it really is for men as well. But about owning your own divinity, and I've been sharing my own personal journey through there. And then I started writing for a Portuguese magazine about my life here in New Zealand, just as a perspective of a foreigner on New Zealand culture. So I do that once a month. And recently I've just written a children's book, which was not on the cards, but it just kind of came up. So that's kind of how I started claiming my writing back.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll just take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll just look at some of the topics of your perspective of a Portuguese beautiful person being in New Zealand, because I wonder if it's as similar as my Scottishness being in New Zealand. And we'll look a little bit about your children's books. We'll be back in just a moment.
Sure.
The Good Vibrations podcast would like to thank the Phoenix Light Foundation for their support. Unlock your passion for crystals and open yourself up to the world of crystal healing with our self-guided crystal course that you can complete at your own pace online. With guided videos and written support exercises, you can enhance your life with crystal energy. Get 50% off today with the code PHOENIX50. Go to thephoenixlightfoundation.co.nz to start your journey.
Right, so before the break, we talked a little bit about your writings for the magazine, about being a Portuguese resident here in New Zealand. So what sort of differences do you see culturally?
There are a lot of similarities, so I'd say that first, because I find New Zealanders and Portuguese are very warm people, and so I didn't feel that it was a big shift in that respect, because people are awesome here. And I find some similarities with people back home. I guess the main difference is on a superficial level, obviously, the way we eat, because food is very important in my culture. So, but I'm fascinated by the indigenous culture. So the Maori culture really fascinates me, and I think it's beautiful that it is celebrated here in New Zealand and owned. I know there are lots of issues around it, but still it's something that I really feel that we need to acknowledge, because it's incredible. I find though, so on a broader level, we are, Portuguese people are always out. We're very social. We also physically, we're very warm people. So we're used to lots of touching and kissing, and that was the first thing that really I had to shut down when before I came to New Zealand. I already had to adapt it to the London scene, because
London's not like that at all.
The few English friends I had, they didn't know what to do when I first cuddled them, and it was like, okay, I get that. So I do miss that physical contact, and I'm lucky that my husband does express himself that way, and he's a Kiwi, but I do find that I have had to learn how to own that physical side of affection with my friends and people around me. And the drinking culture is quite different too. And then to me, one of the most magical things is the relationship with nature here. It's been very, very inspiring to me, and I think a lot of the world could learn from it. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the main things. Socially, I have had to write about difficult themes, so I don't shy away from that. I've started maybe on a light path, but I've been really diving into more sensitive issues. So I've recently written about suicide, which is something that really shocked me. And why I want to talk about it is because I feel that what keeps it so prevalent is the not talking about it. And I'm really glad that people are starting to own it more. But so I've written a little bit about that as well. And then there's the cool stuff like the rugby culture and really got into that. So there's really no theme off the table for me. So I'm currently working on talking about white privilege. So it's not a very easy theme to write about, and I want to be sensitive about it. But I always celebrate New Zealand though, because this is my home too. So no matter how difficult the theme is, I just acknowledge that it's part of human condition, whatever goes on. It's not just here. But yeah, I'm really privileged to be living here. And so I always honor with each piece the land that I call home now.
Yeah. And how easy is it for you to go from English to Portuguese? Is it just like riding a bike? You can just, you don't have, just the translation's just already there in your mind.
Yeah, well, that's cool because actually being bilingual, there's no translation process involved. You actually just generate in the language you're speaking. And then when you switch to the other one, you're generating in that other language. So it's, although for writing, you do, obviously, it's a different craft, but in being a bilingual writer, I really need to nurture that because I do find that I've lived away from Portugal most of my adult life. So I've been away from Portugal probably 14 years now. So it's a long time. So when I sit down to write, sometimes there'll be things that come to me. I'm like, oh, that sentence in English would be really punchy here. But I go, no, I'm writing in Portuguese. And, not so much vice versa, but more when I'm writing in Portuguese, I have to just shut off the English.
And are you raising your children bilingual?
Yes.
You're teaching them Portuguese too? Oh, that's awesome. And then if they learn Maori, of course.
Yeah, well, they actually pick it up because we go to library and they go to kindy and a lot of Maori gets spoken and just songs, all of that. They pick it up quickly because they don't know it's two languages. They know there's just more than one word for the same thing. So it's a cool thing.
Awesome. And with your children's book, is there a framework that you can tell us what that's about? I know you don't want to give too much away.
No, but I'm happy to talk about it because it was something, the inspiration came to me so quickly and I really wanted to act on it. Because I read this book by Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic, a few years back, and like her words really stuck with me. So whenever I have an idea, I no longer sit on it too long because she says it doesn't have to be good. It's not your fault that you were that writing lights you up and you were bestowed with this gift. So it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be out. With having my children, I thought it's not going to serve anyone if it just stays inside me and they'll never get to know their mother if my precious inner thoughts are all stored inside me and are going to die with me. So so I got the inspiration probably a few months back and I decided to really act on it because I don't have much time for writing just with my kids, but I was like, right, I can commit to probably an hour a day or, on a good day, 1 hour, on a not so good day, none, but it doesn't matter. But one thing you told me as well, so I would like to bring that into the piece because you once did a reading for me and you said that my grandmother, and so she's with me tonight, I've got my bracelet, you said that she was saying to me that in her time was even more difficult to do what she loved. And she was telling me that it just takes a little bit each day to be doing the things that light you up, and really that I really followed the breadcrumbs. So I always think of my grandmother, even though I've never met her in person, she's a very strong presence in my life. So I thought this book is there, it needs to come out. And then a personal circumstance, so I lost someone a young person in my life, and that really shook me up. And I thought, the time is now.
Yeah.
The time is now. Yeah. The time is now, is always now. So I just sat down and wrote it. I told my husband, I'm going to need maybe on a Saturday, I'm just going to need a few hours to just edit this when all the bits are together. And so I finished the manuscript and I submitted it to the publishing company, so it's being edited at the moment. But you asked about the framework, and it's called The Magic of Who You Are, and it's pointing to a lot of the things we already talked about. But there's 3 main pieces. I want to celebrate the magic and the divine inside all of us. And I see that children have no problem owning that from a young age, but they also forget so quickly, and that really breaks my heart. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then the second part is owning the ordinary. So we talk about, we're all so special and so amazing, and we are. Yes, part of us is, but part of us isn't. Part of us is very ordinary. We do a lot of bad things. We do a lot of mistakes. And when I was addicted to perfection, I was really ashamed of that. And I thought there was something wrong with me because I didn't have those things nailed. And I've gone, actually, no, we're all like that. So might as well tell our kids that when they do stuff that they're not proud of, that's okay. It's part of the human experience, and it doesn't take their awesomeness away. And then the third piece to me is probably even the most important, is our connection to something bigger. So I mentioned I was part of a Catholic upbringing, and a lot of my adult life was spent reviewing my relationship with my spirituality, and that has changed in shape, but I've always been connected to something bigger than myself. Right. And I felt that, for example, through my teenage years, that really carried me through, in the times when you're not sure who you are, what's your place in the world, really to be present to that there's something bigger with a bigger purpose, and that your life serves something bigger than you, carries you through. And I feel that because of everything that religion has had to answer for, and quite rightly so, people have decided to shut that part out. So there's no ritualization of this relationship to something bigger.
No.
There is for some of us, but we're losing it really quickly. And so I don't want to impose a religion on my children, because I don't own one at the moment. I'm just a spiritual person aware of a higher power, but I want them to always know that their life is a co-creative process. It's not all up to them. There's something bigger. Call it love, call it God. There's something bigger, and there's also that something big connects everything and everyone. And so that's how the book wraps it all up. Because really that third piece, I feel I see a lot of hopelessness in the world today. And I feel it myself when I read certain things. And then I bring myself back, no, that's right. We're the good, we're the bad, and we're all connected to something bigger, and we can choose to serve love. Every day we've got the choice, every moment we've got a choice to veer from fear to love, and that's kind of what it's about.
Gosh, sounds amazing. So have you got a timeline when you think this will be published? Or
I really wanted it to have it before Christmas, but it won't be, because we're doing the illustrations at the moment, and it's quite a long process. So I think early next year sometime.
Oh, beautiful.
So January, February, probably.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute joy having you in the studio. Thank you for coming along. And I had a little dig through Google, of course, as we do, and I found this little saying. And the saying is, a goddess is a woman who breaks the mold. She's who she wants to be, and she offers no apologies. And I think that's that owning. That's that confidence thing that I saw at the Women's Expo. These beautiful young women just being who they were, confidence, no apologies. They didn't need to apologise for anything, actually. They were just who they were. So I just need to get with the programme.
Well, no one does, right? No one has to apologise for anything.
No.
We're all born
Yeah.
divine and ordinary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's not going to change.
No, you've been a real inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on today. It means a lot, and good luck with the book. Keep in touch. Do you have a website that people can go on to?
Yes, it's www.goddessesintheworld.com.
Beautiful. Well, hopefully people will be streaming it and getting some advice from you. And until the next time, you take care.
Cool. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. You've been listening to Good Vibrations with me, Phyllis Brown. I hope my guest story today has inspired you to grow and make positive changes in your life. You can find Good Vibrations on Facebook and Instagram and share your journey with us. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcast and share, rate and review our show. Or follow us on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and join us next week for more Good Vibrations.
This podcast was brought to you by the Phoenix Light Foundation. For personal development courses, visit thephoenixlightfoundation.co.nz and use the code PHOENIX50 for 50% off all courses.